Hey, welcome to the Faith and Life podcast. In a snowy, wintry, snow globe like frozen tundra of central Ohio in January 2026. Yeah,
Yeah,
Greg, how about that?
right? And we had to close church on Sunday.
Yeah,
And 12 inches of snow at our house. Like this is whew.
yeah.
I know we always joke like, oh, there's gonna be a big storm, and it never
It-
then like it's like, oh, an inch of snow, and we're like, no, this was legit for at least for us in central Ohio. So
no doubt. This is legit. It puts a capital L legit to this one.
yes.
It was for real. And to the point where I didn't even leave the house. I don't think
No,
anybody left their house for 2 days,
no.
last couple of days. Today was
Well,
the first day, been able to get out.
yeah, this is the first day I got into a car to drive a little bit, and I just drove to around the corner to my mom's house to drop off the kids. Like
Yeah.
it because like we were talking, we didn't even get snowplowed for a while. So like it's been
Yeah.
like so 2 days you wouldn't have been able to get out. So it's been weird. Like
Yeah,
we haven't had this in Ohio for a while.
for sure. And look, if anybody's listening to this and watching this from a different place besides Central Ohio or most of the United States where this snowstorm hit, and you're nice 80 degrees and sunshine, good for you. Enjoy it. Welcome. I mean, I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
Today it's somewhat sunny and then snow. And cold.
These are the times where I remind myself like I don't have hurricanes here. I don't have
Right.
tornadoes really as much here. I don't
Yeah.
like why am I in the cold? This okay. I can do this.
This is why.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't have a crazy question or an interesting question. We usually start this out with something, but I think the snow took those from my brain. I didn't plan for one. Do you have a thought? Any
Let's
question that you have?
let's stick with the snow theme
Yeah.
and let's go with what is the best snow day activity? And it can be as a kid from when you were a kid or even like as an adult now.
Yeah, that's a good one. The best snow day activity by far when I was a kid and when our boys were at home
Hmm.
was going sledding.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember going as a kid, we used to go this sledding hill a few miles from my house, and it felt like a gigantic hill because I was a kid. I've seen the hill since. It's not gigantic. It's big,
Yeah.
but it's not. It's bigger. Smaller than I thought it was.
Yeah.
Uh, and boy, that was the best. That was absolutely the best thing. And then taking our boys sledding and carrying that tradition forward on a snow day was awesome. Loved
Yeah.
it.
I don't know if our kids have actually gone sledding, like real sledding before. I know like they've done it at grandma's house, but we've never on a snow day like packed up to go to a sledding hill or anything with the
Yeah.
girls. I did like that was my favorite as a kid though. So I feel like I'm slacking in that role as a parent then because I was like, but we were spoiled because I lived out in the country and we never had to drive to go sledding. We had a hill in front of our house.
Oh,
Like our driveway was so far off the road that we had a big hill in front of our house. So we just took our sleds down our driveway, got towards the road a little bit, but like still like, 30 yards away from it, and then just started sledding down the hill, and it was the best. We had
wow.
a sledding hill in our front yard. And like so like we'd have people from school that would like drive by and stop and come. Like our phys ed teacher stopped over one point. She's like, I'm coming sledding with you guys. So we're like, all right, yeah. So like it was just like we were spoiled. And then after that, you're cold. You go in with a nice warm cup of hot chocolate.
Yep.
But man, yeah, sledding was the best. Now I'm as an adult, I'm just like, oh, it looks pretty. I'm gonna sit and read.
Yeah. 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 And that's awesome. I mean, you're right. Going in, it was nice and warm inside, and just that the contrast between the really cold and the activity, and then going in and just and relaxing with that hot cup of cocoa was awesome.
Mhm.
And when the boys got to be teenagers, we would go skiing. We'd take them
Ooh.
to one of the ski places up north. Maybe it always was a snow day. Like, yeah, I mean, we would be a day they had off from school. We would go skiing,
So
and
good.
super fun. Yeah, good way to spend a day. So, all right. So the topic today we are talking about is work as worship. So
Mm.
it's not that we worship work or anything like that. It's more just can we look at work as an act of worship,
Mm.
as an expression of worship, maybe
Okay.
rightly said, work as worship. And so, yeah, I mean, and when we think about worship, work as worship, as an expression of worship, we have to back up and say, well, what is worship? You
Right.
know, and worship is not necessarily just singing songs of praise to God or offering prayer. That is a way that we worship on a corporate level or on an individual level. But worship is rightly assigning. It's like uh, in relationship to something else and recognizing the transcendence of this and the significance of what that is. That is, the Lord lives, and I live my life always in mindful relationship to this one
Mm.
who calls me into relationship. And that I think as I'm thinking about it, the being mindful of that relationship, that is, I'm not God. God is God. I'm not.
Yeah.
And recognizing God's with me at every time, at every place, that's an act of worship to
Mm.
me. Um, it's a beginning of an act of worship,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So that's my initial thoughts. Any thoughts you have?
Well, and I look at it too as, an act of worship, but almost like as a form of like evangelism aspect too, like
Hmm.
which is I would say a form of worship as well, right? Of uh, how do we, how do we share our faith and how do we go about it? And I see that like, I think a lot of times in the it's like, oh, the pastors have to be the ones that preach the gospel and share. And it's like, man, so many people have such a great opportunity in their places. And it's like, how do you go about it? And it's not like you're sitting there like handing out biblical tracts at your office. I think it's more of just like
Right.
how you present yourself. And I think as as a believer, as a person, and like to see that kind of filter into our, our worship. Are we living our Sunday morning worship out into the world? And that's, where I kind of gleam off that the worship aspect of it a little bit more of it's not something worship for me is not something that I go to Sunday morning and then when I come home from it, I take off my worship jacket and I'm like, all right, cool, I got it. Like, no, it's something that we kind of wear with us throughout. And how do we find ways that we can worship and honor God throughout our entire week, whether it's work and other aspects. But I look at it from the idea of I just think so often of how we present ourselves can really be a way of active worship as well to by sharing that our faith by who we are as Christians too in the work setting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you're getting at to me, and one of the things you said remind me of this, that sometimes we think there's a secular, sacred divide in
Hmm.
life, that there are secular things we do that are not sacred, and there are sacred things we do, like go to Sunday morning worship and gather together, or prayer is a sacred activity, or reading the Bible is a sacred activity, and that you have secular and sacred, like church and state, right?
Right.
But um, in really what we're talking about is sacred and secular is a false dichotomy, but they are intertwined.
Hmm.
There's really not a secular. If we're a follower of Jesus, sacred and secular are together
Yeah.
because that's the way Jesus was.
Right.
He lived his life in a secular world as the sacred one, right? So his whole life was an act of worship. His whole life, eating, drinking, meeting with people, going to synagogue on Sabbath, and so on, was all an act of worship. And so, I might go to Sunday morning worship and then go to work at Chase on Monday.
Hmm.
Well, Chase can be a sacred activity. Going to work at Chase can be a sacred activity as much as going to church on Sunday morning. And that's kind of what we want to unpack here a little bit today and recognize, look, you and I both work in a church, a sacred place, right?
Right.
In sacred work things. But and we recognize that there are a lot of people, majority of people who may be listening to this don't do that. I mean, they work like at Chase or other places like
Right.
that. So I mean, I have to recognize that we're kind of speaking from a different perspective
Right.
way, and I have a limited perspective in that way.
Yeah.
But the reality is that that sacred secular divide doesn't need to be there. It is intertwined.
Yeah.
To,
Well, and I think again, I think it just is that way of. Well, I love how you say that secular and spiritual. There's not divided; it's intertwined a little bit, and I think it's important for us because so often we can compartmentalize our faith, and it's like I've heard it said like, and maybe it's just not an accurate quote, but people that my friends have been servers, they say the worst crowds to serve are the Sunday after church group, and I'm like that's like a horrible mindset, like that servers, and like you're nodding your head like you've heard that as well, probably, and it's like to me like that is like that's the worst representation of our faith that we can have, like that we just get filled up and we can compartmentalize our faith so much that then we don't treat people who are serving us with the love and dignity and respect that we should with our fellow people, that like then that like they dread it, and it's something that's known that like the church crowd's the worst crowd because whatever reason, whether they don't tip enough, they're rude, they're demanding. I'm like, man, that's a horrible witness for us. And so that's where I say like we can't have it compartmentalized. We can't have our our worship of God be compartmentalized, because then I think we can get into these dangerous representations of what our faith should be.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're right. And it's not that we have to like say I work at Waffle House, or I work at Chase Bank or wherever anywhere. It doesn't mean I have to wear my faith on my sleeve.
Right.
But it can affect how I am, exactly to your point.
Yeah.
And it's also how we see our work. Like the question that was in this is, what does it mean to see our jobs as callings, not just careers? Like we use the word calling for people who work in churches. I was a called to be a student pastor. I was called to be a pastor in the church. That's true. But people can say I was called to be CEO,
Yeah.
or I was called to be a doctor. I was called to be a nurse or whatever that is. And so it's looking at it as a calling, not just a career. Um, and it's a layer beneath seeing as a career. Like there's something deeper going on when it's a calling. Like
Mhm.
God placed me in this for a particular purpose, in this particular time and place to serve these people. And it's God's call for me to
Mhm.
place me here. Um, yeah, that's a different mindset,
Yeah.
I think. So I'm not just kind of clocking in, clocking out. It's my
Right.
job. You know, I'm just getting a paycheck and doing what I just need to do. So my first job out of college, I worked as assistant manager in retail. And I knew I was going to go to seminary,
Okay.
and but I didn't. I had a kind of a year transition time, and I needed a full-time job. So I applied to different places, and I got this assistant manager job at a retail men's store in a mall. And I did look at it as a calling in some ways. I knew it wasn't going to be my career,
Right.
but I wanted to work in that environment as my question always was, how can I be a Christian as an assistant manager?
Mhm.
You know, how can I treat the part-time employees that we hire, that
Mhm.
we schedule with dignity and respect as I'm really called to live. I mean, it's really about I'm called to live a particular way as a follower of Jesus. And now I'm in this role as assistant manager. How does my calling as a follower of Jesus affect who I am as
Yeah.
assistant manager? That was my experience. And so it wasn't always an easy question to answer. It was an ongoing question I was answering
Yeah.
on a weekly and sometimes daily basis. How do I treat customers? And how do I treat my fellow managers and so on?
Yeah. And I maybe it, and I don't know, right? Because like I can't sit there and say like when I was in high school I worked at Jersey Mike Subs. Like I wouldn't ever have said like
Yeah,
that was a calling, but I
right.
would look at it as in like, look, at the time that I'm here. how can I do the best at what I can do, right? Be and like you said, the best to the other employees, to the customers and things like that. And I think that's where it trickles down to me of how do we handle ourselves as believers, and looking for those best outlooks. My dad, I remember my dad as he was CEO of a financial company, and like he was very big on like, look, if we're gonna work hard, we're gonna do this, but like he's like, I'm not gonna put up with lying. I'm not gonna like all the values that he had as a Christian, like he tried to implement those values into his work. And so like, they were very adamant about like, hey, families, do your family need help with daycare, things like that, because we want like the family should always come before the job kind of aspect. But and then he'd be like, but I expect then if you're gonna treat the job in the right way if you're gonna have that. So I think for those of letting your values too like filter into to who you are and how you can then, because the values that we get from our Christian faith, right? Too, I think that filters out to how can we serve other people in the midst of this, in the job that we're in, the place that we're in.
Yeah, I remember what Martin Luther said. Anecdotally, he said, if you're going to be a ditch digger, be the best ditch digger
Hmm.
around. Doesn't matter what you're supposed to be doing in the world, just do your best at it. Because doing the best at it affects the witness of the gospel, right? Because so if we had an employee, for example, and if I still worked at a retail store and there was a coworker of mine that professed to be a Christian, but just showed up late all the time, did shoddy work, treated customers poorly, and then said, "Hey, let me share the gospel with you." I would I would hesitate to listen to this person because I don't respect them in their work, and because they don't treat their work well. I mean, they just don't treat just they don't take it as seriously. And so but if they were an excellent employee, and then they said one day, "Hey, let's have lunch together. I want to share the gospel with you." That says a whole bunch because now I respect them. So how we work matters immensely. I think Martin Luther's right. If you're going to be a ditch digger, whatever that is, just do your absolute best.
Yeah. Well, that's the aspect too over, right? Like you talk about, employee always late or aspects like that of, I mean, obviously, listen, we're not here to like condemn somebody, but like if, things happen and things, but like there is like, I have friends that are always late to things. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. And like it'd be a joke of like, oh, they're always just late. And then it's like, oh, they just don't, maybe I look at it, start to care. They don't care about me enough that whatever else is more important. And that's why, they're late. Like, because if they cared about me, they would make the time to not always be late when it's something I'm doing. And I think that falls right into it goes to, why would I want to explore a Christian, this faith, this religion of something where like the followers don't genuinely care about people, or it comes off that they don't care about people and they're or lazy or not doing the best that they can do. Like that's doesn't seem like something I'd want to go and be a part of.
Hmm.
So it's, how we handle that too in the workplace, I think is a great example of a witness, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and there's biblical examples of this. Like Joseph, if you go book of Genesis, Joseph.
Yeah.
Joseph, his job was to work for Pharaoh. And what did Joseph do? It says Pharaoh saw him as the best, basically the best person in his court. Here's this Hebrew follower of God who's now serving Pharaoh, who is not a follower of the same God.
Right.
But Joseph gave his absolute best to Pharaoh and made Pharaoh great. Now, turned out, Pharaoh's enslaving Joseph's own people, that's a different level of conversation. But the fact that Joseph did that, then you look at in the
But even
exile.
to go off of that though,
Yeah.
it then put Joseph in a position because of how he handled himself and how he treated, that he rose up into the ranks, that then he could then go and help more people because of how he handled himself in the midst of it. It wasn't working, like you said, he wasn't working for a great noble person, but he was doing what he could do the best that he could, and he rose up to then put him in a position that he then could use his position of power to help other people. Like that that's awesome. So,
Yeah. And you got the book of Daniel. Daniel's that way. You
hmm.
know, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and Daniel are examples of the same thing that Joseph did. The book of not Esther. Oh shoot, what's the other one?
Oh, Root.
Where
No,
for such a time as this. It's Queen Vashti. Queen not Vashti. You know what I'm talking about?
the why am I blanking? It's the female who raises up into the
She's
ranks.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Mordecai
Yes,
is
and
antithesis. Oh shoot. That's
we
gonna
are
bug me.
bumbling.
We are.
It's not Ruth, is it? No.
No. Uh-uh. Well, anyway, it's people can go back and look. Here's the word, the guy's Mordecai. She says, for such a time as this, I'm here to, and God placed me in this role in as the queen. I think
Yep.
she's the queen, you know? And think about this. This is politics and Christianity coming together, or not Christianity, politics and the kingdom of God coming
Book of
together.
Esther.
Interesting. What's that?
Book of Esther.
It is Book of Esther.
You were right. Book of
Oh,
Esther. Yes.
Book of Esther. Yeah.
See what, and that's what threw
Um,
me off. Once you started doubting the Book of Esther, I'm like, well, Mike's already said it's not Esther. Then what is it? What is
yeah. But there could be, so here's my thing. I've met therapists who are Christians, but they wouldn't call themselves Christian therapists. They're therapists who are Christian.
Yep.
It's a different thing. You know, they can be a therapist for any single person, every person on this planet, you know, but they do so in a way they can also do some of the Christian way.
Yeah.
There are
I
politicians who are Christian politicians. There's also politicians who are Christians.
right.
And sometimes the most effective politicians are not Christian politicians, but they're politicians who are Christian, just
Yeah.
like therapists who are Christian as opposed to Christian therapists.
Yeah. I had a friend in a band, and they were like, oh, he's in a Christian band. I'm like, and they were always like, no, we're Christians who are in a band. And because I think when they had the label of Christian band, then they had their music had to be this and this, and it's like, no, we're Christians who are, and like, doesn't mean it's going to be not, bad music. It's going to be still hopefully uplifting, but maybe not everything's a worship song. Like, so I think there's those aspects too. I think that's how you can kind of like, because I think we can hear like, what do you mean like a Christian therapist or this is not? It's there's a difference. There's a
Yeah.
twist to it.
The book, or not the book, the band U2 is precisely that. Christians who are in a band.
Mhm.
And U2 has lasted for 40 plus years and have done great music because they see themselves as artists
Mhm.
who are honing the craft of music. And we're blessed by that. But they're unabashedly Christian at that point.
Yeah.
But certainly their music transcends every genre. I mean, transcends that as well.
Yeah. So you don't have to be, you're not necessarily going to be a Christian Waffle House worker, but a Christian who works at Waffle House or whatever it
Exactly.
is. And
Right.
I think that's a good, because I think then it's more of who you are. It's a part of who you are. And it's still separate from the job.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. By the way, Waffle House, one of the best places, Greg.
Boo, boo. Waffle House is, never go there.
I It's a great place to go, especially on a nice winter day like this. Good hot waffle with a cup of coffee. Come on, that's
And
great.
a fist fight. No, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and you know we love the have the conversation, and grateful that you were with us along for the ride. So we'll talk again next time.
Until next time.